The woman across from Elena had track marks on both arms and a restraining order against the boyfriend who'd gotten her hooked on OxyContin. She was 23 years old. She looked 40. "I can't do this," Sarah whispered, her hands shaking as she twisted a tissue into confetti. "I can't go back there. He'll find me." Elena leaned forward in her chair, keeping her voice steady and warm despite the familiar ache in her chest. She'd had this conversation 100 times. It never got easier. "You don't have to go back there. That's why we have the transitional housing program. 6 months, fully funded. You focus on recovery, we handle the rest." "Fully funded." Sarah's laugh was bitter. "Nothing's fully funded. There's always a catch." "No catch. It's a nonprofit. We exist because people who've been where you are fought to create this space." Elena pulled up the intake forms on her tablet. "The only requirement is that you show up. For yourself. Not for your boyfriend, not for your family, not even for me. Just you." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I don't even know who that is anymore." "Then we'll figure it out together." Elena handed her a fresh tissue. "Starting with getting you into detox tonight. We have a bed waiting." It took another 20 minutes of careful conversation, of addressing each fear and building trust brick by brick, before Sarah finally nodded. Elena walked her down the hallway to meet the intake coordinator, watching as the younger woman clutched the folder of resources like a lifeline. The New Hope Recovery Center occupied the ground floor of a converted warehouse in Boston's South End. They had 12 beds for residential treatment, space for 30 in their outpatient program, and a waiting list that made Elena's stomach hurt. The building had exposed brick walls that made it look trendy in photographs, and a heating system that barely worked. Last winter, they'd kept the thermostat at 62 degrees to save money. This winter, they might not make it to spring. Elena's office was a converted storage closet with a window that looked out at a brick wall. She'd hung curtains to make it feel less claustrophobic, and filled the space with plants that somehow survived on artificial light and stubborn optimism. The furniture was Craigslist special, a desk with a wobbly leg, 2 mismatched chairs, filing cabinets that jammed. On the wall behind her desk, she'd framed the center's mission statement in both English and Spanish. "Recovery is not luxury. It is a human right." She believed that. She'd built her entire adult life around that belief, which was why the envelope on her desk felt like a betrayal. The letterhead was heavy cream cardstock, the kind that whispered money. Thorn Pharmaceuticals. She'd recognized the logo immediately. Everyone in the addiction treatment world knew Thorn. They manufactured half the opioid medications that kept her clients trapped in cycles of dependency, then turned around and funded research into addiction treatment. Blood money trying to buy redemption. The letter itself was professionally cordial. Dr. Marcus Thorn, founder and CEO, requested the pleasure of her attendance at the annual Thorn Foundation Gala. Black tie, the 4 seasons. A celebration of their commitment to funding addiction treatment initiatives throughout New England. At the bottom, handwritten in fountain pen. "Your work at New Hope is exactly what we aim to support. I'd value the opportunity to discuss potential partnership. MT." Elena had thrown the invitation in the trash 3 times. She'd retrieved it 3 times. The ugly truth was that New Hope needed money, not wanted, needed. They were 6 weeks from closing their doors. Their largest donor had died last year, and his children had no interest in continuing his legacy. The state grants barely covered utilities. Individual donations were unpredictable. They'd already cut staff down to skeleton crew, eliminated benefits, deferred maintenance. There was nothing left to cut except the mission itself. 6 weeks until they had to tell Sarah and the 11 other residents that recovery would have to wait until they found somewhere else, somewhere that probably didn't exist. She'd started at New Hope 6 years ago as a case manager, fresh from California with a bachelor's degree in social work and determination to build something clean. When Margaret, the founding director, retired 3 years later, the board had promoted Elena despite her relative inexperience. They'd seen what Margaret saw, someone who understood addiction from the inside, even if Elena had never touched drugs herself, someone who worked like she was running from something, someone who needed this mission as much as the clients did. They had no idea how right they were. Elena looked at the invitation again. She thought about Sarah's shaking hands, about Miguel, who'd been clean for 6 months and was finally rebuilding a relationship with his daughter. About Teresa, who'd overdosed twice before finding new hope, and now volunteered to answer the crisis hotline. She thought about the evidence files hidden in 3 different locations, the automated emails set to send if she missed her weekly check-in, the insurance policy she'd bought with her father's secrets. Then she picked up her phone and called the RSVP number before she could change her mind again. The woman who answered had the kind of voice that suggested she was paid very well to be helpful. "Dr. Thorne will be delighted you're attending. May I arrange car service for you?" "I'll manage, thank you." "Of course. We look forward to seeing you Saturday evening." Elena ended the call and stared at the phone for a long moment. Then she opened her laptop and did what she'd been avoiding for a week. She Googled Marcus Thorne. The images loaded first. Tall, maybe 6'2", with the kind of build that suggested he actually used the private gym he certainly had access to. Dark hair silvering at the temples. 45 according to his Forbes profile. Strong jaw, intelligent eyes, the kind of face that looked equally at home in a boardroom or on a magazine cover. Which made sense because he'd been on several. Forbes, the billionaire doctor disrupting pain management, Wall Street Journal, Thorne Pharmaceuticals, When Ethics Meet Economics, Boston Globe, from Harvard Medical to $8 billion empire. She clicked through to the Forbes article. Marcus Thorne had founded his company 15 years ago after completing a residency in anesthesiology at Mass General. His innovation, developing non-addictive pain management protocols that reduced opioid dependency in post-surgical patients by 40%. The medical community had celebrated him. Patient advocacy groups had praised him. His company had gone public 5 years ago at a valuation that made him one of the youngest self-made billionaires in pharmaceuticals, with a personal net worth estimated at $2.3 billion, and yet Thorne Pharmaceuticals still manufactured OxyContin variants, still profited from the same opioid crisis they claimed to be solving. The article included a quote from an interview. "We can't simply eliminate pain medication. That would be medical malpractice. What we can do is develop better alternatives and better protocols. Change takes time. Change takes funding. We're committed to both." Reasonable, measured. The kind of statement that made him sound thoughtful rather than predatory. Elena had learned not to trust reasonable men with perfect statements. But she'd also learned that survival sometimes meant accepting help from complicated sources. She closed the laptop and looked around her tiny office, at the plant struggling toward inadequate light, at the mission statement she'd printed and framed herself, at the photograph tucked into the corner of her desk, her with the first graduating class from the residential program, 12 people who'd fought their way back from the edge. Saturday, she'd go to the gala. She'd listen to Marcus Thorne's pitch. She'd evaluate whether his money was worth the compromise. And she'd be very, very careful not to let him, or anyone else, discover who she really was. Elena Moreno, 29 years old, social worker, nonprofit director, Boston resident for 6 years. All of it true, none of it the whole truth. Her real surname wasn't Moreno. That was her mother's maiden name, the one she'd legally adopted when she left Mexico at 23. The one that didn't connect to cartel operations spanning 3 countries. The one that let her disappear into American social services and build a new life, one careful lie at a time. The dress was the first problem. Elena owned exactly 2 formal outfits, a black pantsuit she wore to city council meetings when begging for funding, and a navy sheath dress she'd bought at Marshall's for a friend's wedding 3 years ago. Neither was appropriate for the Four Seasons ballroom. She spent an afternoon she couldn't afford at consignment shops in Back Bay, eventually finding a floor-length gown in deep emerald silk that fit perfectly and cost less than 2 weeks of groceries. The label had been cut out, but the construction screamed expensive, probably Valentino or Dior from several seasons ago. It had a high neckline and long sleeves, elegant without being revealing, conservative enough for a nonprofit director, sophisticated enough to not look out of place among Boston's philanthropic elite. She bought it, then immediately felt guilty about the expense. Saturday evening, Roberto drove her to the Four Seasons in the ancient Honda Civic they used for New Hope errands. He'd wanted to park and wait, but Elena had refused. The last thing she needed was questions about why her assistant looked like he could break a man's spine with his bare hands. "Text when you're ready. Roberto said, his eyes scanning the street with habitual wariness. "I'll be 10 minutes away." "I'll be fine. It's a charity gala, not a cartel meeting." "Those can be equally dangerous in my experience." Elena touched his arm briefly, the closest thing to affection Roberto ever accepted. "Go. I'll call if I need you." She watched the Civic disappear into Boston traffic, then turned to face the Four Seasons. The building rose above the public garden like a monument to exactly the kind of wealth she'd spent her adult life running from. Doormen in pristine uniforms. Valet stands filled with cars that each cost more than New Hope's annual budget. Women in furs and diamonds stepping out of town cars. Elena adjusted her mother's pearls, the only jewelry she owned that belonged at this kind of event, and walked through the doors like she had every right to be there. The ballroom was a study in understated opulence, crystal chandeliers that probably cost 6 figures each, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the public garden, Boston Common spreading beyond in late November darkness, tables draped in champagne silk, centerpieces of white orchids and ivory roses that must have been flown in from somewhere tropical, a 12-piece orchestra in white tie playing something by Vivaldi. Servers circulated with Veuve Clicquot La Grande Dame 2012 and hors d'oeuvre that looked like tiny sculptures. Elena accepted a glass of champagne she had no intention of drinking and surveyed the room. She'd been to events like this before, in another lifetime. She knew how to navigate this world. The key was confidence. Act like you belong, and people assume you do. "Elena Moreno?" The voice was male, warm, with the kind of confidence that came from never doubting your welcome anywhere. She turned. Marcus Thorne was taller than his photograph suggested, and the camera had somehow failed to capture the intelligence in his eyes. Not just smart, but observant in a way that made Elena's spine straighten. Instinctively, he wore Tom Ford beautifully, a midnight blue tuxedo that probably cost $12,000 and fit like it had been made for him, which it had. A Patek Philippe Nautilus caught light on his wrist, the rose gold complicated model that retailed for about $180,000. Old money would wear something quieter, new billionaires announced. "Dr. Thorne," she offered her hand. His handshake was firm, but not aggressive, and he held her hand a half-second longer than strictly professional. "Marcus, please, thank you for coming. I know you have reservations about Thorne Pharmaceuticals." Direct. She hadn't expected that. "Should I ask how you know that?" "Your center refused our foundation's funding offer 2 years ago. The board sent a very polite letter explaining that you didn't feel pharmaceutical money was appropriate for addiction treatment. It was the most elegant go-to-hell I've ever received." Elena felt her face heat slightly. "That was before we were quite so desperate." "Honesty, I appreciate that." He gestured toward the windows. "Would you walk with me? The ballroom is impressive, but it's hard to have a real conversation over Vivaldi and networking." She should say no. Should stay in the crowd where it was safe and public. But desperation made people take risks, and New Hope needed money more than Elena needed caution. "Lead the way." He guided her through the crowd with practiced ease, nodding at various donors and board members, but not stopping. They stepped through French doors onto a terrace overlooking the public garden. November in Boston meant 40 degrees and wind off the harbor, but someone had installed sleek patio heaters that created islands of warmth. The terrace was empty, too cold for most gala attendees. Marcus shrugged out of his tuxedo jacket and draped it over her shoulders before she could protest. It was warm from his body heat and smelled like Tom Ford Oud wood and something else, something clean and male that made her more aware of him than was professionally appropriate. "You'll freeze," she said. "I grew up in Vermont. This is spring weather." He leaned against the stone balustrade, and suddenly he looked less like a magazine cover and more like an actual person. "Tell me about New Hope, not the pitch version you give donors, the real version." Elena wrapped his jacket tighter around her shoulders, buying time to think. This felt like a test, though she couldn't identify what kind. "The real version is that we're 6 weeks from closing. Our biggest donor died, his children have other priorities, and addiction treatment doesn't inspire the kind of philanthropic passion that gets buildings named after people. We've got 12 residents who trust us to keep them safe and sober, 30 outpatient clients who need us to stay open, and about 42 days to figure out how to do that. How much do you need? To stay open through next year, 300,000 to actually grow and serve the 100 people on our waiting list, closer to 2 million. That's all? He said it like he was surprised the number wasn't larger. That's all. Elena met his eyes. But I'm not here begging. If we take your money, I need to know what we're taking it from. Your company manufactures the same opioids that put my clients in treatment. How do you reconcile that? Most men would have gotten defensive. Marcus just nodded like he'd been expecting the question. I don't reconcile it. I hate it. When I started this company, I genuinely believed I could disrupt pain management fast enough to make opioids obsolete. I was naive about how slow institutional change moves. So now I'm stuck manufacturing medications I think shouldn't exist, using those profits to fund alternatives and hoping I can shift the market before more people die. That's very honest. You asked for honesty. I'm not interested in performing philanthropy for tax benefits or reputation management. I'm interested in actually solving problems. Your center has better outcomes than facilities with 10 times your budget. I want to understand why, and then I want to help you scale that model. Elena studied him in the light spilling from the ballroom. He seemed genuine, but she'd met good liars before. Men who believed their own narratives, men who turned reasonable words into weapons. What do you want in return? Data, access to your protocols, permission to use your model in the training programs we fund, credit for you as the architect when we scale it. He paused. And honestly, I want to understand how someone your age built something this effective. You're what, 30? 29? Most nonprofit directors at 29 are running their parents' foundations or managing small community organizations. You're operating a residential treatment facility with complex medical protocols and maintaining outcomes that rival Mass General's addiction medicine program. That doesn't happen by accident. Warning bells rang in Elena's mind. This was too interested, too specific. I had a good teacher. Margaret built New Hope. I just kept it running. Margaret was 72 when she retired and had been running the center for 15 years. You've been director for 3 years, and outcomes have improved by 30%. That's not maintenance. That's innovation. So I'll ask again, how did you do it? The question felt dangerous. Specific competence drew attention. Attention led to questions. Questions led to answers she couldn't give. I understand addiction from the inside, Elena said carefully. Not as an addict, but as someone who's seen what it does to families, who's watched people destroy themselves and everyone around them. That gives me perspective that most clinicians don't have. Something shifted in Marcus's expression, recognition, maybe, or curiosity. But before he could press further, a couple emerged onto the terrace, laughing about champagne and cold air. The moment broke. We should go back inside, Elena said, starting to shrug off his jacket. Keep it, at least until we're back in the ballroom. Marcus held the door for her, and as she passed, he said quietly, I'd like to continue this conversation. Dinner? Somewhere we can actually talk? Elena's first instinct was refusal. Getting closer to Marcus Thorne meant more questions, more attention, more risk. But New Hope needed funding. She needed to evaluate whether he was a solution or a different kind of problem. Dinner, she agreed, somewhere quiet. His smile was quick and genuine. I know just the place. They returned to the ballroom, and Marcus was immediately absorbed by donors and board members who wanted his attention. Elena used the moment to slip away, texting Roberto for pickup while she collected her coat from the check. In the Civic heading back to South End, Roberto glanced at her in the rearview mirror. You're wearing a man's jacket. I was cold. He was polite. Polite men can be the most dangerous kind. Elena thought about Marcus's questions, his interest in her specifically rather than just her center. I know, but we need his money. Money always costs more than the price tag suggests. Spoken from experience, Roberto's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He drove another block before answering. My niece thought she could take money from a dangerous man and walk away clean. She was wrong. He'd never mentioned a niece before. In 6 years of working together, Roberto had shared almost nothing about his life before New Hope. Elena knew he'd been cartel muscle. That was obvious from his skill set. She knew he'd helped her escape and had stayed to protect her. But the details had always been opaque. What happened to her? She's dead, because I moved too slowly, because I didn't have an exit plan ready when she needed one. He met her eyes in the mirror. I won't make that mistake again. The weight of that promise settled between them. Roberto had stayed with her for 6 years, taking a non-profit job that probably paid a tenth of what his skills could earn elsewhere, living in a studio apartment in Dorchester, eating cafeteria food and pretending to be a facility manager when he was actually the reason she was still alive. "The dead hand system is still active," Elena said quietly. "If anything happens to me, 7 different email accounts send everything to the FBI and major media outlets. Physical copies go from 3 different post offices. He can't touch me without destroying himself. Unless he decides he doesn't care about being destroyed. Some men prefer everyone burning to just them." Elena thought about her father, currently serving life at ADX Florence. Thought about the threats that still came occasionally, prison phone calls that said nothing but communicated everything. Roberto was right. Some men preferred scorched earth. "I'll be careful," she promised. "Be more than careful. Be smart." She nodded, staring out at Boston sliding past. The city she'd chosen because it was far from Mexico, from her father's organization, from everything she'd run from. The city where she'd built a clean life through careful lies and constant vigilance. And now she was having dinner with a man who asked too many specific questions and looked at her like he was solving a puzzle. "Be smart," Roberto had said. Smart would be canceling dinner, keeping Marcus Thorne at arm's length, taking his money if he offered it, but maintaining professional distance. But Elena hadn't survived by being just smart. She'd survived by being strategic, by assessing threats and opportunities with clear eyes, by knowing when to run and when to stand. Marcus Thorne was either the solution to New Hope's funding crisis or a different kind of problem. She needed to determine which, even if it meant getting close enough to be dangerous. 3 days later, Marcus texted her an address in the North End. No restaurant name, just coordinates and a time, 7 p.m. Tuesday. Elena spent an embarrassing amount of time deciding what to wear. Not the consignment gown, too formal, not her work clothes, too shabby. She settled on black cigarette pants from Banana Republic, a cream silk blouse that was her one good piece, and her mother's pearls. Professional, but not trying too hard. Roberto offered to drive her again. She refused again. Whatever this was, she needed to handle it herself. The address turned out to be a nondescript door on a narrow North End street, the kind of entrance you'd walk past without noticing. But when Elena pressed the buzzer, the door was answered by a man in a suit who looked like private security trying to pass for maitre d'. "Ms. Moreno?" "Yes. Dr. Thorne is upstairs. Please, follow me." They climbed 2 flights of narrow stairs to a door that opened into. Elena stopped in the doorway. It wasn't a restaurant. It was a private apartment, converted into something between a dining room and an art gallery. Exposed brick walls hung with what looked like actual Rothko and de Kooning pieces, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, a single table set for 2 with baccarat crystal and Bernardo china, candles that cast warm light without being ostentatiously romantic, and Marcus, standing by the windows in charcoal slacks and a white Oxford shirt with the sleeves rolled up, casual, disarming, more attractive than he had any right to be. "This is not a restaurant," Elena said. "No, this is better than a restaurant." Marcus gestured to the table. "Restaurants have other people. Other people make private conversation difficult. I wanted somewhere we could talk freely. This feels less like dinner and more like an interrogation." "Does it?" "I was hoping it felt like 2 people having an honest conversation without audience." He pulled out her chair. "But if you're uncomfortable, I can have my driver take you anywhere. In Boston, no hard feelings, your choice." It was a test of trust, of willingness, of something. Elena could leave, should leave. This was too intimate, too private, too much like the kind of situation where powerful men made women disappear. But Roberto knew where she was. The dead hand system would trigger if she missed tomorrow's check-in. And more than that, some instinct said Marcus Thorne wasn't that kind of danger. He might be a different kind entirely. Elena sat. Marcus's smile was small but genuine. "Wine? Or should I guess that you don't drink?" "I'll have wine, small glass." He poured a Chateau Margaux that probably cost more than her monthly rent. The food arrived in courses prepared by someone who wasn't visible, likely a chef in the apartment's kitchen. Crudo with citrus and olive oil. handmade pasta with burrata, perfectly seared branzino. Each course was extraordinary, but Marcus barely seemed to notice the food. His attention was on her. "Tell me how you ended up in Boston," he said. "I needed a fresh start. Boston seemed like the right place." "From where?" "California." "Where in California?" "Does it matter?" "I'm curious about you." "Why?" "Because you're interesting. Because you built something impressive. Because you're sitting here being evasive when most people in your financial position would be selling me on their mission." He leaned back, swirling wine in his glass. "You don't want to talk about yourself? That makes me want to know why." Elena set down her fork carefully. "Maybe I'm just private. Maybe, or maybe you're hiding something." The air between them changed, charged with something that felt like danger, but also like honesty. Like he was giving her permission to see that he saw her. "Everyone's hiding something," Elena said finally. "The question is whether it matters. Does yours matter?" She met his eyes. "Not to New Hope's outcomes, not to whether we can save lives with proper funding, not to anything that should concern you as a potential donor." "As a potential donor, no. As someone personally interested in you, yes, it matters." "You don't know me well enough to be personally interested." "Then let me get to know you." He leaned forward. "Here's what I know so far. You're 29. You run an addiction treatment center with remarkable effectiveness. You're suspicious of pharmaceutical money, but desperate enough to consider it. You speak Spanish fluently enough that you printed your mission statement bilingually. You have a man named Roberto who's either your assistant or your bodyguard or both. And you're terrified that I'm going to figure out whatever you're not telling me." Elena's heart hammered. This was too much, too specific, too close. "I should go." "Please don't." Marcus's voice was quiet. "I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to be honest about what I see, because I need you to understand something. I'm not interested in perfect people with clean histories. I'm interested in people who do good work. Whatever you're running from, whatever you're protecting, it doesn't change that New Hope saves lives. It doesn't change that I want to help you do that." "Why?" "Because I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, and most of it came from contributing to a crisis that's killed hundreds of thousands of people. Because trying to fix it afterward doesn't absolve me, but it's all I can do. Because I meet dozens of nonprofit directors every year, and most of them care more about their salaries than their missions. You're different. You actually believe." The honesty in his voice made something crack in Elena's chest. She recognized that tone, guilt trying to buy redemption. She'd built her entire adult life on the same foundation. "I believe because I've seen what happens when you don't," she said quietly. "When you look away. When you tell yourself someone else will handle it. When you choose comfort over courage. Personal experience? Everyone has personal experience with failure. The question is what you do afterward." Marcus studied her for a long moment. $3 million. "What?" "I'll fund New Hope for 3 years, $1 million per year, unrestricted funds. You use it however you think best. Expand your residential program, hire more staff, build the model you know works. In return, I want data sharing, protocols, outcomes, what's working and what isn't. And I want you to train other centers using your methods." Elena stared at him. $3 million, 3 years of security. The ability to actually help the 100 people on their waiting list instead of turning them away. "What's the catch?" "No catch, but I do have one selfish condition." "Which is?" "Let me take you to dinner again. Somewhere you actually choose, somewhere you feel safe. Let me get to know you as more than a funding opportunity." The request was so unexpected that Elena almost laughed. "You want to give me $3 million in exchange for a second date?" "I want to give you $3 million because it's the right thing to do. I want a second date because I find you fascinating, and I'd like to understand why." It was a terrible idea. Getting personally involved with Marcus Thorne meant more questions, more scrutiny, more risk. It meant lying to someone who seemed determined to see through her lies. It meant letting him close enough to potentially discover truths that could destroy everything. But $3 million would save New Hope. Would save Sarah and Miguel and Teresa and the 100 others waiting for help that didn't exist. Sometimes survival meant accepting help from complicated sources. Sometimes it meant accepting that danger came in attractive packages. "One more dinner," Elena said, "somewhere public. And if I don't feel comfortable, We maintain only professional contact going forward. Agreed, completely agreed. Marcus smiled, and it transformed his face from intimidating to almost boyish. You choose the restaurant. Text me when and where. They finished dinner with the tension eased but not gone, talking about New Hope's protocols, about addiction treatment philosophy, about the failure of American healthcare to address root causes. Marcus was sharp and engaged, asking questions that showed he actually understood the medical complexity. Elena found herself relaxing despite her better judgment, enjoying a conversation with someone who kept up. When his driver dropped her at her apartment in South End, a studio in a renovated triple-decker that was all she could afford, Marcus walked her to the door like they were teenagers on a first date. "Thank you for taking a chance on dinner," he said. "Thank you for not making it weird." "Just wait for the second date." He was smiling, but there was something serious underneath. "Elena, whatever you're protecting, I meant what I said. It doesn't change that you do important work." She nodded, not trusting her voice. He waited until she was inside before returning to his car. A midnight blue Aston Martin DB12 that probably cost $250,000 and purred like a very expensive cat. Elena locked her door, set her security system, and stood in the dark for a long moment before pulling out her phone. She texted Roberto. He offered 3M for 3 years, no strings except data sharing. The response came immediately. Too good to be true usually is. I know, but New Hope needs it. Be careful, smart men are more dangerous than stupid ones. Elena set down her phone and looked around her tiny apartment. 400 square feet of carefully anonymous space, furniture from Target, nothing personal except the photograph of her mother tucked in a drawer, a life built to be packed and abandoned in under an hour if necessary. For 6 years, she'd lived like this, careful, vigilant, ready to run. But she was tired of running, tired of looking over her shoulder, tired of letting her father's shadow dictate every choice. Maybe Marcus Thorne was dangerous. Maybe he was asking too many questions. Maybe getting closer to him was the smartest or stupidest thing she'd done since leaving Mexico. But New Hope needed funding, and Elena needed, what? Connection? Understanding? Someone who looked at her like she was a puzzle worth solving instead of a threat to be managed? Dangerous, her instincts whispered. Necessary, her heart answered back. Elena pulled out her laptop and typed, Saturday, Austria, 7 p.m. See you there. She hit send before she could change her mind. Outside, November wind rattled windows. Inside, Elena made tea and tried not to think about how Marcus looked when he smiled, how his questions had felt less like interrogation and more like genuine interest, how $3 million could save 12 lives currently and hundreds more in the future, how she was already rationalizing letting him get closer, how this might be the beginning of something extraordinary or the end of everything she'd built. She'd know soon enough. Austria occupied a corner location in the theater district, all white marble and blue lighting that made Elena think of expensive aquariums. She'd chosen it deliberately, public, visible, the kind of place where Boston's elite brought clients and mistresses in equal measure. Safe. Marcus was already seated when she arrived, wearing a navy blazer over a white shirt, no tie. He stood when he saw her, and his smile was genuine enough to make her question every instinct that said this was dangerous. You clean up well when you're not freezing on terraces, she said. You look... He paused, taking in the black dress she'd agonized over. Simple but well cut, borrowed from a consignment shop and returned tomorrow. Beautiful. You look beautiful. The compliment settled warm in her chest, despite her better judgment. Dinner was easier than the private apartment, safer. Marcus ordered the plateau of seafood without asking, oysters and shrimps and lobster arranged like edible architecture, and a bottle of Sancerre that the sommelier brought with reverent hands. The conversation flowed naturally, touching on everything from addiction treatment philosophy to Boston winters to whether the Celtics had a chance this season. You're a basketball fan? Marcus asked, surprised. I lived in California, Warriors territory. You learn or you're exiled. Where in California? There it was again, the specific question, the gentle probe for information she couldn't give. Small town, you wouldn't know it? Try me, I did my undergrad at Stanford, know the state pretty well. Elena took a careful sip of wine. Near San Diego, we moved around a lot. Military family? Something like that. Marcus's eyes crinkled slightly, not quite a smile, but recognition that she was deflecting. You're very good at answering questions without actually answering them. Years of practice. At what? Being mysterious or being careful? Both. He leaned back, studying her with that unsettling focus. Here's what I'm trying to figure out, whether you're protecting yourself from me specifically or from everyone generally. Does it matter? Yes, because if it's me specifically, I can address whatever concern you have. If it's everyone generally, then you've been hurt before, and I need to be patient while you learn I'm not that person. The honesty in his voice made Elena's careful walls crack slightly. You're very direct for a billionaire. I thought your people usually communicated in subtext and tax strategies. My people? He laughed. I grew up in Burlington, Vermont. My dad was a mechanic. My mom taught third grade. I went to Harvard on scholarship and worked 3 jobs to avoid loans. I'm only a billionaire because I got very lucky with very good timing. Underneath the Tom Ford, I'm still the kid who changed oil for gas money. Tom Ford is pretty. Good camouflage. Says the woman wearing Stella McCartney. Elena looked down at her dress, startled. This is vintage from a consignment shop. I know, but it's Stella McCartney vintage from about 6 seasons ago. Original retail probably around $3,000. You have excellent taste and a limited budget, which tells me you grew up around money, even if you don't have it now. Her heart kicked uncomfortably. He was too observant, too interested in details that didn't matter unless you were looking for patterns. My mother liked nice things, Elena said carefully. I learned from her. Is she still in California? She's dead. I'm sorry. And he meant it. She could hear it in his voice. My mom died 5 years ago. Cancer. There's no good way to lose them, but there are worse ways than others. The shared grief created unexpected common ground. Elena found herself saying, My mother died when I was 22. Car accident. Very sudden. This was true. Her mother had died in a car accident, one arranged by cartel rivals, but the death certificate said accident, and that's all anyone needed to know. 22 is so young to lose your mother. Old enough to survive it, young enough that it changed everything. Marcus reached across the table, his hand covering hers briefly. The touch was warm and solid and sent electricity up her arm in a way that made her want to pull back and lean in simultaneously. Is that when you went into social work? He asked. Yes, I needed to do something that mattered, something clean. The word slipped out before she could catch it. Clean? Honest, helpful. The opposite of... She stopped. The opposite of what? Nothing. I'm talking too much. I like when you talk. You're usually so careful with words. It's nice when you let something unguarded through. The waiter arrived with their entrees, halibut for her, dry-aged ribeye for him, saving Elena from having to respond. They ate and talked about safer topics, the new ICA exhibition, whether the city should allow more luxury high-rises in Seaport, the best pizza in the North End. Marcus was easy to talk to when she wasn't busy defending herself from his questions. Smart and funny and self-deprecating in ways that didn't feel performed. Dangerous, her instincts whispered. Men who make you comfortable are the ones who get close enough to hurt you. After dinner, he walked her to the tea station. She'd refused his offer of a car service and stood with her in the cold while they waited for the train. I'd like to see you again, Marcus said, if that's something you're open to. I don't know if that's smart. Probably isn't. I'm not known for my impulse control. He smiled. But I'm also not usually wrong about people, and everything I see tells me you're someone I want to know better. Even though I won't answer your questions, especially because you won't answer my questions. Mystery is compelling. He touched her, face gently, thumb brushing her cheekbone. But I can be patient. Take your time. I'll be here when you're ready. The train arrived, and Elena forced herself to step away from his hand, from his warmth, from the temptation to trust him. Good night, Marcus. Good night, Elena. She watched him through the train window as it pulled away. A billionaire in Tom Ford, standing alone on a T platform like it was the most natural thing in the world. Roberto was waiting when she got home, sitting in the lobby of her building like he lived there. How was dinner? He asked. Fine, normal. He's interested. In you or in your secrets? Both, I think. Roberto stood, and in the dim lobby light, he looked every year of his age and experience. Men who ask too many questions are either very curious or very suspicious. You need to figure out which. I know. Do you? Because you're looking at him like he's a solution instead of a complication. Elena wanted to argue, but Roberto was right. She was already rationalizing, already finding reasons to trust Marcus, already imagining what it would be like to tell him the truth and have him not run. I'll be careful, she said. Be more than careful. Be smart enough to remember why you ran in the first place. 3 days later, Marcus sent flowers to New Hope. Not a dozen roses, that would have been too conventional. Instead, a massive arrangement of white orchids and green cymbidium in a crystal vase that probably cost more than the flowers. The card read, "For the office that needs more than struggling plants. Thank you for Saturday." M. Elena stared at the arrangement for a long moment before calling him. "You can't send flowers to my work," she said when he answered. "Hello to you too. Why not?" "Because my staff will ask questions." "Tell them a donor sent appreciation." "A donor doesn't send baccarat vases." "How do you know it's baccarat?" "Because I'm not blind and I grew up—" She stopped. "Around money," Marcus finished. "You grew up around money, which you've mentioned twice now. Elena, whatever you're protecting, it's creating more questions than answers." She closed her office door, lowering her voice. "I had a complicated childhood. That's all you need to know." "I don't need to know anything, but I'd like to. There's a difference." "Why? Why do you care about any of this?" "Because I find you fascinating. Because you're smart and passionate and guarded in ways that make me want to understand why. Because I haven't been this interested in someone in years." He paused. "And because I think you're lonely. I think you've been alone for a long time, and I recognize that because I've been there too." The honesty cut through her defenses like a blade. Elena sat down at her desk, staring at the orchids he'd sent. "I'm not good at this," she said quietly. "At what?" "Letting people in, trusting, being normal." "Normal is overrated. I'm interested in actual, not normal." His voice softened. "Have dinner with me again. My place this time. I promise no interrogation, just food and conversation." "Your place is too private." "Then somewhere public. Your choice again." Elena knew she should say no, should maintain professional distance, should take his money for New Hope and keep him safely in the donor category where he couldn't ask dangerous questions or look at her like she was a puzzle he wanted to solve. But she was tired of being alone, tired of having only Roberto for company, tired of protecting herself so carefully that she forgot what it felt like to connect with someone. "Thursday," she said. "Mistral, 7 o'clock. I'll be there." She hung up and looked at Roberto, who was standing in her doorway with an expression that suggested he'd heard everything. "You're making a mistake," he said. "Probably. He's going to figure you out." "Maybe. And when he does, what then?" Elena touched one of the orchid petals, smooth and cool and perfect. "I don't know, but I'm tired of running from maybes." December arrived with early snow and the kind of cold that made Boston feel like it was actively hostile to human life. Elena and Marcus fell into a rhythm. Dinner once a week, always somewhere she chose, always public. He didn't push for more, but the relationship deepened anyway through long conversations that stretched late into evenings, through texts that made her smile during difficult client sessions, through the way he listened when she talked about New Hope, like her words mattered. The funding came through the week before Christmas. $3 million transferred to New Hope's account with a simple memo. "For the work that matters. MT." Elena called him immediately. "You actually did it," she said. "Did you think I wouldn't? I thought there'd be more contracts, more conditions, more foundation bureaucracy." "I don't believe in bureaucracy. I believe in people doing good work. You're doing good work. End of analysis." He paused. "How does it feel?" "Terrifying. Like I can actually do everything I've been planning. Like I have no excuse now." "You'll be amazing. I know this." "How can you know?" "Because I've been watching you. The way you talk about your clients. The way you fight for them. The way you've built something meaningful out of nothing. You're going to change hundreds of lives, Elena. Maybe thousands." The certainty in his voice made her throat tight. "Thank you for believing in this. In me." "Always." She ended the call and sat in her office looking at the bank statement that confirmed the wire transfer. $3 million, 3 years of security, the ability to hire more staff, expand the residential program, actually help the people on their waiting list. Marcus had given her this, not because she'd slept with him, they hadn't even kissed yet, not because she'd promised him anything beyond data sharing, just because he believed in the mission. Just because he believed in her. It was the most dangerous gift anyone had ever given her. Christmas week, Marcus invited her to a holiday party at his Beacon Hill townhouse. Elena almost refused, too intimate, too much like meeting his world. But curiosity won. The townhouse was exactly what she'd expected. 5 stories of red brick on Mount Vernon Street, probably built in the 1840s. Original details preserved with meticulous care, worth somewhere between 10 and 15 million. The kind of property that appeared in Architectural Digest with reverent photography. Inside was less expected. She'd anticipated museum-perfect interiors, designer everything. The kind of space that looked beautiful but felt cold. Instead, the house was lived in and comfortable. Books everywhere, medical texts mixed with fiction and history, art that was clearly chosen for personal taste rather than investment value, a kitchen that showed signs of actual cooking, furniture that invited sitting. "You look surprised," Marcus said, taking her coat. "I expected more billionaire." "What does billionaire look like?" "Cold, perfect, uncomfortable." "I tried that for about 6 months after going public. Hired a decorator, bought museum pieces, made everything look like a magazine spread, hated every second. Fired the decorator, donated most of it, bought furniture I actually like." He led her toward voices and laughter. "Turns out money doesn't change your taste, just your budget." The party was small, maybe 20 people, and surprisingly unpretentious. Doctors from Mass General, a few non-profit directors, his sister visiting from California who pulled Elena aside within 10 minutes. "So, you're the mysterious woman my brother can't stop talking about," Sarah said. She looked like Marcus. Same intelligence in her eyes, same directness. "I wouldn't say mysterious." "He would. Says you're the most interesting person he's met in years and he can't figure you out." Sarah smiled. "Marcus likes puzzles. Usually he solves them in about 10 minutes. The fact that he hasn't solved you yet is driving him crazy in the best way." "What if I'm not a puzzle? What if I'm just private?" "Then you're perfect for him. He needs someone who doesn't want anything from him except his company. Most people see the money first. You see him." The observation was uncomfortably accurate. Elena did see Marcus, not just the billionaire CEO, but the man who'd grown up working 3 jobs, who felt guilty about his company's role in the opioid crisis, who sent orchids because her office plants were struggling. Later, after most guests had left, Marcus gave her a tour of the house. The 3rd floor was his private space, master suite, study, a library that made Elena's heart hurt with wanting. Floor-to-ceiling built-in shelves filled with books organized by topic and then, inexplicably, by color within topics. "You color code within categories?" she asked. "Makes me happy. I know. It's weird. It's perfect." She ran her fingers along spines, medical texts, histories of pharmaceutical development, biographies, literary fiction. Marcus had eclectic taste and actually read everything. She could tell from the worn spines and dog-eared pages. "You can borrow anything you want," he said. "Dangerous offer. I might never return them. Then I'd have an excuse to see you to collect." Elena turned to find him closer than she'd realized, near enough that she could see the silver threading through his dark hair, the lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often. "Thank you for inviting me tonight," she said. "Thank you for coming. I know this was out of your comfort zone." "Everything about you is out of my comfort zone." "Good." He touched her face, the same gentle gesture from the tea station weeks ago. "I don't want to be comfortable. I want to be honest. Even if honest means complicated, especially then." He kissed her, soft and careful and asking permission. Elena's first instinct was to pull back, to maintain distance, to protect herself. But she was tired of protecting herself from everything good, tired of choosing safety over connection. She kissed him back. It started gentle but built quickly, weeks of tension and careful distance dissolving into want. his hands in her hair, her back against his bookshelves, the taste of whiskey and something sweet, heat and pressure and the feeling of falling towards something that might save or destroy her. Marcus pulled back first, breathing hard. Stay. It wasn't a demand, just an invitation. Just hope. Elena's phone buzzed in her purse. She pulled it out to silence it and saw Roberto's text. Everything okay? It's late. Reality crashed back. She was in Marcus's house, kissing a man who didn't know the first true thing about her, while Roberto waited to make sure she got home safe because her father's enemies might still be hunting her. I can't, she said. Can't or won't. Both. I'm sorry. She saw confusion in his face, and hurt, but also understanding. It's okay, I'm pushing too hard. No, you're not. I'm just... She stopped, unsure how to explain without explaining everything. Complicated, Marcus finished. You're complicated, I remember. He straightened, creating distance. Let me call you a car. I can take the tea. Elena, it's 11:30 on Christmas Eve. Take the car. She nodded, grateful and guilty in equal measure. The ride home was silent, Elena watching Boston slide past through tinted windows, while her lips still felt warm from his kiss. Roberto was waiting in her building's lobby again. You kissed him, he said. How do you know? Because you look different, softer, scared. Elena sat down on the lobby's ancient couch. I like him, Roberto. Actually like him, not because of his money or because New Hope needs him. Just him. That makes this worse. I know. When are you going to tell him? I don't know. The longer you wait, the worse it will be. He'll feel betrayed, like you used him. I didn't. I know that. But he won't. Not at first. Roberto sat down beside her, and for a moment they were just two people tired of running. You can't build something real on lies, Elena. Eventually you have to choose. Trust him with the truth or walk away. What if I tell him and he runs? Then he was never worth it. But what if you don't tell him and he figures it out himself? Then you lose both, the truth and the relationship. Elena leaned her head back against the wall. When did you become wise? When I watched my niece die because I moved too slowly. Some lessons you only learn once. They sat in silence for a while, the building's old radiators clanking with heat and effort. He makes me want normal things, Elena said finally. A relationship, trust, a future that isn't just survival. Then give him the chance to choose you knowing the truth. That's the only way it works. What if the truth is too much? Then he's not the man you think he is. The week between Christmas and New Year's, Elena didn't hear from Marcus. She told herself it was fine. He was probably with family, dealing with year-end business, giving her space after she'd run from his house. But the silence felt like withdrawal, and she caught herself checking her phone too often. New Year's Eve morning, he finally texted, "Still interested in complicated?" She responded immediately, "Yes." "Good, because I'm not done trying. Dinner tonight? Just us, somewhere quiet. I want to talk." Elena's stomach tightened with something between anticipation and dread. This felt like a crossroads. Either she told him the truth, or she walked away before they got deeper. Roberto's words echoed, "You can't build something real on lies." "Your place," she texted back. 8 p.m. I need to tell you something. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "Okay, whatever it is, we'll figure it out." Elena spent the day rehearsing what to say, practiced different versions, starting with her mother's death, starting with her father's crimes, starting with the evidence files she'd used to buy her freedom. Every version sounded impossible. Every version felt like something that would make Marcus look at her differently. But Roberto was right. She couldn't build something real on lies. At 7:45, she stood outside Marcus's townhouse in the cold, trying to gather courage. The door opened before she could knock. "I saw you on the security camera," Marcus said. "You look terrified." "I am terrified." "Come inside. Whatever it is, come inside first." She followed him to the library, the same room where they'd kissed a week ago. Marcus had a fire going, whiskey poured, music playing low, cozy and intimate and safe. He handed her a glass and sat down in the leather chair across from the couch, creating space, not pressuring. "Tell me," he said simply. Elena took a long drink of whiskey for courage. "My name is Elena Moreno. That part is true, but Moreno is my mother's maiden name. I took it legally 6 years ago when I moved to Boston." Marcus's expression didn't change. "What was your name before?" "Reyes. Elena Reyes." She watched his face, waiting for recognition. It took a moment, but then his eyes widened slightly. "Reyes, as in Diego Reyes, currently serving life without parole at ADX Florence for RICO violations, drug trafficking, money laundering, and ordering 17 murders. Yes, that Reyes. He's my father." The silence stretched thin and dangerous. Marcus set down his whiskey glass very carefully. "Tell me everything," he said. And Elena did. She told him about growing up in Guadalajara in a house that looked normal but wasn't, about her mother's careful efforts to shield her from the business, about realizing at 15 what her father actually did, about her mother's death when she was 22, not an accident, an assassination, about spending a year planning her escape while finishing her degree. She told him about the evidence files her mother had hidden, years of documentation, account numbers, shipping manifests, contact lists for an organization spanning 3 countries, about threatening her father with exposure unless he let her leave, about Roberto helping her escape while her father was distracted by a cartel war. She told him about the dead hand system, 7 email accounts, 3 post offices, a weekly check-in that kept her safe by making her death inconvenient. She told him about building new hope as penance for growing up in blood money, about changing her name and her history and spending 6 years looking over her shoulder. She told him everything except the one thing she couldn't yet say, that she was falling in love with him. When she finished, Marcus sat in silence for a long moment. Elena forced herself not to fill the quiet, not to apologize, not to beg for understanding. "How old were you when you left?" he finally asked. 23. "And you've been alone since then, for 6 years?" Roberto stayed, but yes, essentially alone. 6 years? You've been carrying this for 6 years. Marcus stood and poured himself more whiskey. "Why tell me now?" "Because Roberto said, I can't build something real on lies. Because you deserve to know who you're involved with. Because," her voice cracked, "because I'm tired of being alone." Marcus turned to face her. "Are you in danger? Currently, actively in danger?" "There are still threats, occasional. My father's organization is mostly dismantled, but some of his people still remember me. That's why I have Roberto. That's why I avoid publicity." "The dead hand system, it actually works?" "I test it monthly." "Yes, it works." "Good." He set down his glass and crossed to the couch, sitting beside her, close but not touching. "Thank you for telling me." "That's it? Just thank you? What do you want me to say?" "I don't know. That you're horrified, that this changes everything, that you can't be involved with the daughter of a cartel leader." Marcus took her hand, his thumb stroking over her knuckles. "Elena, do you know what I see when I look at you? Someone with a dangerous past and a complicated present? No. I see someone who walked away from wealth and power to build something meaningful. Someone who spent 6 years helping people recover from the same poison her father spread. Someone brave enough to carry that weight alone." He lifted her hand to his lips. "Your father's crimes are not your crimes. His legacy is not your legacy. You chose differently. That's what matters." Elena felt tears burning behind her eyes. "You're not angry I didn't tell you sooner? I'm angry you had to carry this alone for so long. I'm angry that you've been living in fear. But angry at you? No." He pulled her closer. "I meant what I said before. I'm interested in who you are, not who you came from. Even though my father is one of the most notorious cartel leaders in Mexico, even though your past is complicated, so is mine. Your past is not that complicated." Marcus's smile was small and sad. 3 years ago, the FBI investigated Thorne Pharmaceuticals for possible connections to Mexican cartels. They thought we were knowingly distributing to fake medical companies that were actually fronts for money laundering. We were distributing to those companies. They were legitimate orders, paid with what looked like clean money, but we didn't know. Took 6 months to prove it, and by then, the damage to our reputation was done. Elena stared at him. That's how you know about my father's organization. That's how I learned about it. The FBI showed me manifests, shipping records, the whole network. When they cleared us, I spent a year studying everything about how the cartels operate, understanding the system that had used my company without my knowledge. He met her eyes. I saw the name Reyes in those files. Your father's organization was one of the biggest operations, but I didn't connect it to you until just now. Does that change anything? Yes, it means we both know what it's like to be touched by something terrible without choosing it. It means we both understand guilt by proximity. He touched her face. It means I understand why you're careful, why you're scared, why you ran from my house last week. I thought you'd see me differently if you knew. I do see you differently. I see you more clearly. You're not just a nonprofit director. You're someone who escaped something most people can't imagine and built a completely new life. That's extraordinary. Elena let herself lean into him, felt his arms come around her solid and sure. For the first time in 6 years, she told someone the truth and didn't lose them. What happens now? She asked. Now we figure this out together. Now you're not alone. Anymore. Marcus tipped her face up to his. If you want that, if you want me despite the complications, I want that. I want you. Even though I'm a billionaire with questionable taste in furniture organization, even though. He kissed her, and this time there was no hesitation, just relief and want and the feeling of finally being seen completely and not rejected. Outside, Boston celebrated the new year with fireworks and noise. Inside, two people who'd both been carrying impossible weight learned what it felt like to set it down. Stay this time, Marcus said against her mouth. Okay. Okay? Yes, okay. Elena pulled back enough to see his face. But I need to text Roberto, so he doesn't break down your door at midnight. Marcus laughed, and the sound was warm and free. Text Roberto? Tell him you're safe. Tell him I know everything. Tell him what? Tell him I'm going to keep you safe too. Elena sent the text. I told him everything. He knows. Staying here tonight? I'm okay. Roberto's response came immediately. About time, be happy. She showed Marcus the message. I like Roberto, he said. He'll still probably threaten to kill you if you hurt me. Fair, I'd do the same in his position. They stayed up past midnight talking about her childhood, about his company's investigation, about the fear they'd both carried, about the future they might build now that honesty created foundation. At 2 a.m., Marcus led her upstairs to his bedroom. They didn't make love, not yet. Too much emotion and revelation for that level of vulnerability. But they fell asleep, tangled together in his bed. And for the first time in 6 years, Elena slept without her phone in reach. Without checking her dead hand system. Without sleeping in clothes she could run in. She woke to winter light streaming through windows and Marcus's arm heavy across her waist. Morning, he said, voice rough with sleep. Morning. Any regrets? Elena thought about the question, about 6 years of careful lies now replaced with dangerous truth, about trusting someone with information that could be weaponized, about choosing vulnerability over safety. No regrets, she said. Good. He pulled her closer. Because I'm not letting you go now. Possessive for a man I've known 3 months. Efficient. I don't waste time once I know what I want. And what do you want? You, this, a future that doesn't involve you constantly looking over your shoulder. He kissed her shoulder. I want to help you feel safe. Actually safe, not just protected. That's a tall order. I'm a billionaire. We specialize in tall orders. Elena laughed, and the sound surprised her, light and genuine and unguarded. Maybe this was what normal felt like, what trust felt like, what it meant to be seen completely and chosen anyway. Or maybe she was being naive. Maybe danger was coming. Maybe trusting Marcus was the mistake Roberto had warned against. But, lying in his bed, watching Boston wake up outside his windows, Elena chose to believe in maybe. Chose to believe that honesty could build something stronger than careful lies. Chose to believe that loving a good man might be worth the risk, even if everything else came crashing down around them. January in Boston was brutal, the kind of cold that made your lungs hurt and your face go numb in the 30 seconds between heated buildings. Elena spent most of the month moving between Marcus's townhouse and New Hope, learning what it felt like to have a partner who actually knew her. Marcus was surprisingly domestic for a billionaire. He cooked, actual cooking, not reheating takeout, and was territorial about his kitchen in ways that made Elena laugh. Saturday mornings, he made elaborate breakfasts while she sat at his kitchen island reading the Globe and stealing bites of whatever he was testing. "You're a menace?" he said, swatting her hand away from the eggs. "You're precious about scrambled eggs." "They're not scrambled. They're French-style soft curds with chives and crème fraîche. There's a difference. You're literally a billionaire arguing about eggs." "I contain multitudes." He plated the eggs with toast and smoked salmon, pouring her coffee the way she liked it, black with just enough cream to cut the bitterness. "Eat." "You're too thin." "I'm fine." "You're stressed. You've lost weight since December." He sat across from her, his own plate untouched. "Talk to me about what's wrong." Elena picked at the eggs, which were admittedly perfect. "Nothing's wrong." "Elena, I'm just adjusting to this, to us, to not being alone. Is it too much, too fast?" "No." "Yes. Maybe." She set down her fork. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for the other shoe to drop, for someone to figure out who I am and destroy everything." Marcus reached across the table, taking her hand. "The dead hand system still works?" "Tested it Thursday. Yes, it works." "Roberto's still watching your building?" "Like a paranoid hawk." "Then you're as safe as you can be. The rest is just anxiety, which makes sense given your history, but it's not prophecy. Sometimes good things stay good." Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that happiness could be simple and lasting, but she'd grown up watching her father destroy everything he touched. She'd seen good people corrupted by proximity to violence. She'd learned that safety was an illusion and trust was a weapon. "What if loving you makes you a target?" she asked quietly. "Then we deal with it together." He squeezed her hand. "I'm not afraid of your past, Elena. I'm afraid of you running from a future because you're convinced it can't work." She nodded, but the fear didn't dissipate. It sat in her chest like ice, whispering that this was temporary, that danger was coming, that she was foolish to believe in normal. 2 weeks later, the danger arrived. Elena was at New Hope, reviewing intake paperwork when Roberto appeared in her doorway with an expression that made her stomach drop. "We have a situation," he said quietly. "What kind of situation?" "Federal kind. 2 agents in the lobby asking for you. FBI." Elena's vision narrowed. 6 years. She'd had 6 years of peace, and now the FBI was here. Either her dead hand system had failed, or her father's people had found her, or... Did they say what they want? "To talk, that's all." Roberto's face was carefully neutral. "You want me to tell them you're not available?" "No. If they're here, avoiding them makes it worse." Elena closed her laptop with hands that wanted to shake. "Conference room, stay close." The agents were exactly what she expected. A man and a woman in dark suits with federal haircuts and expressions that gave nothing away. Special Agent Sarah Chen and Special Agent Michael Torres. They showed credentials that looked legitimate. "Ms. Moreno," Agent Chen said, "thank you for agreeing to meet with us." "Did I have a choice?" "Everyone has choices. This is just a conversation." "Then let's have it." Elena sat at the conference table, keeping her posture relaxed despite adrenaline screaming through her system. Roberto stood by the door, arms crossed. "What do you want?" Agent Torres pulled out a tablet, setting it on the table between them. "How much do you know about your father's current legal situation?" "He's serving life at ADX Florence. That's all I need to know." "He's appealing, claims prosecutorial misconduct, ineffective counsel, violation of due process. His lawyers are good, very good. There's a non-zero chance he gets a new trial." Elena's blood went cold. "That's impossible. They convicted him on RICO charges, multiple counts. Appeals courts don't care about guilt if procedure was violated. Your father's legal team is arguing that evidence was obtained improperly. If they win, everything gets thrown out. He walks pending retrial, and building a new case takes years." Agent Chen leaned forward. "We can't let that happen. But we need testimony to shore up the prosecution's case. Testimony from someone who saw the operations firsthand, who has direct knowledge of the organization's structure. You want me to testify against my father? We want you to tell the truth in court, what you saw, what you know, the documentation you used to secure your exit. We'd like access to that as well." Elena's mind raced. The evidence files were her insurance policy. Giving them to the FBI meant losing her leverage. Testifying meant putting herself publicly on record as the daughter who destroyed her father's empire. It meant death threats that wouldn't be hypothetical anymore. It meant protection details and media attention, and everything she'd spent 6 years avoiding. "No," she said. "Ms. Moreno? No, I'm not testifying. I'm not giving you my files. I left that world. I built a new life. I'm not going back." Agent Torres's expression hardened slightly. "With all due respect, you don't get to leave. Your father is a mass murderer. His organization killed hundreds of people, destroyed thousands of lives. You have information that can keep him in prison, and you're refusing to share it? I have information that keeps me safe. The moment I hand it over, I lose the only leverage I have. We can protect you. For how long? A year? 2? Forever?" Elena stood. "I know how witness protection works. It means losing everything I've built. New identity, new location, no contact with anyone from my old life. That's not protection. That's a different kind of prison." "Better than being dead," Agent Chen said quietly. "I've been living with that risk for 6 years. I know how to manage it." "Do you?" Agent Torres pulled up something on his tablet, turning it to face her. "These are intercepts from the last 6 months. Communications between cartel lieutenants still loyal to your father. They know you're in Boston. They know about New Hope. They're watching you, Ms. Moreno. The only reason you're still alive is because your dead hand system makes killing you too expensive. But if your father walks, if he regains control of the organization, that calculus changes." Elena stared at the intercepted messages. Dates, locations, descriptions of her movements. They knew where she lived, where she worked. They'd been watching her for months. "Get out," she said, her voice shaking. "Ms. Moreno, get out of my building, now." The agents exchanged glances. Agent Chen stood slowly. "Think about it. We'll be in touch. You have our cards." They left 2 business cards on the table and walked out. Elena stood frozen, staring at the tablet screen showing months of surveillance. Roberto closed the conference room door. "They're not wrong," he said quietly. "Don't. Elena, if your father gets out, he won't get out. The conviction will hold. And if it doesn't?" She couldn't answer that. Because Roberto was right. If her father walked free, the dead hand system wouldn't matter. He'd burn everything to the ground just to make a point. She'd be dead within a week. So would Roberto. So would everyone at New Hope who mattered to her. So would Marcus. The thought hit like ice water. Marcus. Marcus who knew her real name now. Marcus who was publicly connected to her. Marcus who would become a target the moment her father had the freedom to act. "I need to talk to Marcus," she said. "Elena, I need to tell him, now." She grabbed her coat and was out the door before Roberto could argue. The ride to Marcus's office, Thorne Pharmaceuticals headquarters in Seaport, took 20 minutes through midday traffic. Elena spent it staring at her phone, rereading the agent's cards, trying to understand how 6 years of careful invisibility had shattered in a single morning. Marcus's assistant tried to stop her. He was in a meeting, but Elena walked past her into the corner, office with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor. Marcus was at his desk with 3 executives in expensive suits. He looked up, saw her face, and stood immediately. "Gentlemen, we're done. Send the revised projections by end of day." The executives left with confused glances at Elena. Marcus closed the door behind them. "What happened?" "The FBI came to New Hope. They want me to testify against my father. His appeal might succeed. They need my testimony and my evidence files to keep him in prison." The words tumbled out too fast. "They showed me intercepts. The cartel knows where I am. They've been watching me for months. If my father gets out, I'm dead. Roberto's dead. And you're a target now too. Because you know who I am. Because we're together." Marcus pulled her into his arms, solid and warm. "Breathe. Slow down. Breathe." Elena forced herself to inhale, exhale, stop spiraling. Marcus's office smelled like expensive coffee and the Tom Ford cologne she'd come to associate with safety. She let herself lean into him for a moment before pulling back. "I'm putting you in danger," she said. "Then we deal with it." You don't understand. If my father gets out, then we make sure he doesn't. You testify." Elena stared at him. "Did you not hear what I just said? Testifying means giving up my leverage, means putting myself on the record publicly, means death threats and protection details and media attention. Yes, and not testifying means living in fear forever, means your father might walk free and kill you anyway." Marcus took her hands. "Elena, you've been running for 6 years. Maybe it's time to stop running and fight. Easy for you to say. You're not the one they want dead. No, but I'm the one who loves you, which means your safety matters more to me than my comfort. And I know, that you can't keep living like this, looking over your shoulder, sleeping with your phone in reach, testing your dead hand system every week like it's the only thing keeping you alive. It is the only thing keeping me alive. No, your courage is keeping you alive, your intelligence, your ability to build something meaningful out of nothing. The dead hand system is just insurance, but insurance doesn't make you safe. It just makes you careful." He touched her face. "I want you to actually be safe. I want you to sleep through the night. I want you to stop being afraid. Testifying won't make me safe. It'll make me a target. You're already a target. At least this way, you're a target who fought back." Elena pulled away, pacing to the windows. Boston Harbor spread below, gray water, cargo ships, the city she'd chosen for its distance from everything she'd run from. It hadn't been far enough. "What if I testify and he still gets out?" she asked. "What if the appeal succeeds anyway? Then I've given up my leverage for nothing. Then we deal with that, with FBI protection, better security, whatever it takes, but at least you'll have tried." Marcus came up behind her, his reflection visible in the glass. "I know you're scared, but I also know you're brave. You escaped a cartel leader and built a new life. You run a treatment center that saves lives every day. You're strong enough for this." "I don't feel strong. I feel terrified." "Good. Courage isn't not being afraid. It's being afraid and doing it anyway." Elena closed her eyes, trying to breathe through the panic. Marcus was right. She was already a target. The cartel knew where she was. The dead hand system only worked if they cared about consequences. If her father got out, he wouldn't care. He'd rather die destroying her than live knowing she'd escaped him, which meant her choice wasn't between safety and danger. It was between passive waiting and active fighting. "If I do this," she said slowly, "if I testify, it changes everything. The media will find out who I am. New Hope's donors will ask questions. Some of them will walk away. My clients will feel betrayed that I lied about my past. Some will, some won't. The ones who matter will understand. And what about us? What about your company? Billionaire CEO dating cartel daughter who testified against her father is going to be international news. Your board will hate it. Your shareholders will panic. Your reputation will take a hit. Let it." Marcus turned her to face him. "Elena, I've spent 5 years trying to rehabilitate my company's reputation after being used for cartel money laundering. This won't help, but I don't care. My reputation isn't worth your life. It's not worth you spending the rest of your years looking over your shoulder. You should care. Your company is a company. Companies recover. What I can't recover from is losing you because I was too worried about optics to support you through this." The certainty in his voice made something crack in Elena's chest. She'd spent 6 years alone, protecting herself because no one else would. The idea that Marcus would risk his reputation, his company's standing, his carefully rehabilitated image for her was almost incomprehensible. "You really mean that," she said. "I really mean that. Even though we've only been together 2 months, even though I know what I want, Elena. I want you, safe, happy, not constantly afraid." He paused. "And I want to be the person you trust enough to lean on, which means supporting you through hard things, not just the easy parts." Elena studied his face, looking for doubt or hesitation, found none. Just absolute certainty and something that looked a lot like love. "I need to think," she said. "Of course. Take whatever time you need. Can I stay here? Just for a while? I don't want to be alone right now." "Stay as long as you want. I have calls this afternoon, but you can work in here, or just sit, whatever you need." Elena settled on his office couch while Marcus returned to his desk. The normalcy of it, him working, her present, neither of them talking, was oddly comforting. Like they were building a life that could withstand crisis. Like this was practice for harder things ahead. She pulled out her phone and texted Roberto, at Marcus's office, thinking, "Don't worry." His response, "Already worrying. It's my job." Elena smiled despite everything. Then she opened her laptop and did what she always did when facing impossible choices. She made a list. Reasons to testify. Keep father in prison. Stop living in fear. Fight back instead of hiding. Protect Marcus from becoming target. Protect New Hope clients and staff. Actually be safe, not just careful. Stop running. Reasons not to testify. Lose dead hand leverage. Become public target. Media attention. Impact on New Hope's funding. Client trust issues. Danger to Roberto. Danger to Marcus. Danger to self. The lists were roughly equal, which meant the decision came down to something else. Not logic or strategy, but values. What kind of person did she want to be? The kind who hid from her past forever? Or the kind who stood up and told the truth, regardless of cost? She thought about Sarah, the client from Act 1 who'd been terrified to leave her abusive boyfriend. Elena had told her, the only requirement is that you show up, for yourself. Maybe it was time to take her own advice. 3 hours later, Marcus finished his last call and found Elena still on his couch, staring at her laptop. "Have you eaten?" he asked. "No." "Want to?" "Not really." He sat beside her, reading her screen. "You made a pros and cons list." "I'm a social worker. We make lists." "What did you decide?" Elena closed her laptop. "I need to talk to Roberto first, and I need to know—" She stopped, the question catching in her throat. "Need to know what?" "I need to know you're really okay with this, with everything that comes after. The media attention, the impact on your company, the danger. I need to know you've actually thought it through and aren't just being supportive in the moment." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Do you want complete honesty?" "Always. I'm terrified, not of the media or the company impact. That's manageable. I'm terrified that testifying will put you in more danger, that some cartel lieutenant will decide the dead hand system doesn't matter and come after you anyway, that I'll lose you because I encouraged you to fight instead of hide." He took her hand. "But I'm more terrified of you living in fear forever, of watching you test that dead hand system every week, of knowing you sleep with your phone in reach and bolt your doors like you're under siege. That's not living, that's surviving, and you deserve better. What if testifying makes it worse? Then we handle it. FBI protection, private security, whatever it takes. I have resources. We'll use them. Private security costs millions. I have billions. Money is the least relevant factor. Here." Elena wanted to argue, but he was right. Marcus's wealth made certain solutions possible that weren't available to most people in her situation. Protection details, secure housing, legal support, all accessible with enough money. "The FBI agents left their cards," she said. "I should call them. Tell them I need details about what testifying actually involves before I decide. Want me to call my lawyers, get them on the phone with the FBI, make sure you understand every angle before you commit? That would be helpful." "Done. I'll set it up for tomorrow." Marcus pulled her closer. "For tonight, let's not think about it. Let's just be normal for a few hours." "What does normal look like?" "Dinner, bad TV, you stealing my clothes because you didn't bring anything to change into." Elena smiled despite everything. "That sounds perfect." They ordered Thai food. Marcus knew the best place in Back Bay and ate it sitting on his living room floor because the dining room felt too formal. Elena did steal his clothes, a Harvard sweatshirt that was enormous on her, and flannel pants she had to roll 3 times. They watched a documentary about penguins that was oddly soothing, and for a few hours, Elena almost forgot that the FBI wanted her to testify and the cartel was watching her, and her father might walk free. Almost. At midnight, her phone buzzed. "Roberto, you okay? Need pickup?" Elena typed back, "I'm staying at Marcus's. Don't worry." "Always worrying. That's the job. But good. Be happy while you can." The text felt ominous. Be happy while you can. Like happiness was temporary. Like danger was inevitable. Marcus saw her expression. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Just Roberto being protective. He's good at his job. Too good. He sees threats everywhere. That's what keeps you alive." Marcus pulled her against his chest. "Speaking of which, if you decide to testify, Roberto's getting upgraded too. Better security, better resources, whatever he needs to keep you safe. You can't just throw money at every problem. Watch me. I'm very good at solving problems with resources. Elena turned to face him. Why are you doing this? Really, we've only been together 2 months. This level of support, this level of risk, it's not proportional. Who decides what's proportional? I care about you. You're in danger. I have the ability to help. The math is pretty simple. Nothing about this is simple. Then let me rephrase. I'm falling in love with you, possibly already fell. And when you love someone, you protect them, however you can, with whatever resources you have. He touched her face. Is that proportional enough? Elena's throat tightened. You're falling in love with me? Inconvenient timing, I know, but yes. That's incredibly stupid given the circumstances. Probably, but I've never been accused of making good romantic decisions. His smile was small and self-deprecating. Too late now anyway. Already fell. Question is whether you feel the same or if I've completely misjudged this. Elena thought about the last 2 months, about Marcus cooking her breakfast and listening to her talk about new hope for hours, about him sending orchids because her office plants were struggling, about him accepting her past without flinching, about him offering to risk his reputation and his company's standing to keep her safe. I'm falling in love with you too, she said, which is possibly the worst timing in history. Or the best. Love is more useful during crisis than comfort. That's not how it works. Why not? Because... Elena stopped, realizing she had no actual argument. Because you're supposed to fall in love during good times, when everything is easy. That's just infatuation. Real love is what happens when things get hard and you choose to stay anyway. Is that what you're doing? Choosing to stay? Yes, even knowing everything, even understanding the danger, even with your father's organization watching you and the FBI pressuring you to testify and the media firestorm that's coming if you do. He kissed her forehead. I'm staying. The only question is whether you want me to. Elena didn't trust her voice, so she just nodded against his chest. They sat like that for a long time, the documentary playing unwatched, Boston quiet outside his windows. Later, in his bed, Elena couldn't sleep. Her mind ran through scenarios, testifying, not testifying, her father walking free, the cartel coming after her, Marcus becoming collateral damage. Every possibility ended badly. You're thinking too loud, Marcus said in the darkness. Sorry. Don't apologize. Just tell me what's wrong. Everything. Nothing. I don't know. Elena rolled to face him. I keep thinking about what happens if I testify and everything goes wrong, if they still get my father out, if he comes after everyone I care about, if Roberto dies, if you die, if New Hope gets destroyed, if I survive but lose everything that makes life worth living. Those are all real possibilities, Marcus said. But so is this. You testify, the appeal fails, your father stays in prison, and you finally get to stop running. You get to build a real life, not a careful life, not a hidden life, a real one, with me, with New Hope growing, with actual safety instead of just careful protection. That's a lot of optimism. Someone has to balance out your pessimism. Elena smiled despite herself. I'm not pessimistic. I'm realistic. You're traumatized. There's a difference. Trauma teaches you that everything ends badly, but sometimes things end well. Sometimes you fight and you win. And if we don't win, then we tried, and that's better than spending your life wishing you had. Elena thought about that, about courage versus cowardice, about fighting versus hiding, about living versus surviving. I'm going to call the FBI tomorrow, she said. Get details, understand what I'm agreeing to. Then I'll decide. That's all anyone can ask. If I do this, if I testify, you need to promise me something. Anything? If it goes wrong, if the cartel comes after me, if I don't make it, Elena, promise me you'll protect Roberto and New Hope. Make sure the funding continues. Make sure the clients are taken care of. Promise me something survives, even if I don't. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, I promise. But you're going to survive. We're going to make sure of it. You can't know that. No, but I can make it as likely as possible. FBI protection, private security, safe houses, whatever it takes. You're not doing this alone. Alone is safer, for you. Alone is lonely. I'll take risky over lonely. Elena kissed him, trying to communicate everything she couldn't say. Gratitude and fear and love and terror. He kissed her back, and for a while, they forgot about the FBI and the cartel and impossible choices. The next morning, Marcus's lawyers arranged a call with agents Chen and Torres. Elena sat in Marcus's home office while 3 of Thorne Pharmaceuticals' senior counsel listened on speakerphone and asked pointed questions about witness protection, testimony scope, timeline, and danger assessment. The details were worse than Elena expected. Testifying would take 3 days of preparation, followed by a full day in court. The trial would be high profile. Federal RICO appeal, major cartel leader, media circus. Her identity would become public record. The prosecution would need access to her evidence files, including the dead hand system locations. If you give us the files, we can trigger the system ourselves if needed, Agent Chen explained. You won't lose the leverage. The FBI becomes the backstop. And if something happens to me before trial, if I die during preparation, then the files go public anyway through your existing system. Nothing changes except you'll have FBI protection in the meantime. What kind of protection? Full detail. Armed agents 24/7, safe house if needed, transport security, communications monitoring, everything we can provide. One of Marcus's lawyers cut in. What about collateral protection? Ms. Moreno has associates who could become targets. Roberto Cruz, for instance, and Dr. Thorne himself. We can extend protection to immediate household and essential personnel. Define essential. Anyone the cartel might leverage against Ms. Moreno. Family, romantic partners, close associates. Marcus met Elena's eyes across the desk. She saw the same calculation she was running. This was real, official. FBI protection meant accepting that danger was imminent and constant. It meant living in safe houses and having armed guards follow her everywhere. It meant giving up the illusion of normal. I need time to think, Elena said. How much time? Agent Torres asked. 48 hours. I'll have an answer by Friday. Understood. We'll wait for your call. After the lawyers disconnected, Elena sat in silence. Marcus came around the desk, pulling her to her feet. Talk to me, he said. I'm scared. I know. Not just of dying, of losing everything I've built, of New Hope failing because donors don't want to be associated with a cartel daughter, of my clients feeling betrayed, of you realizing this is too much and walking away. I'm not walking away. You say that now, I mean it. Marcus took her hands. Elena, I need you to hear me. I'm not going anywhere. Not when this gets hard, not when the media shows up, not when the cartel makes threats. I'm staying. That's not negotiable. Why? You barely know me. I know enough. I know you ran from a monster and built something beautiful. I know you save lives every day. I know you're brave and scared in equal measure. I know I want to spend my life knowing you better. He paused. Elena? Will you marry me? The question hit like physical shock. Elena stared at him, certain she'd misheard. What? Marry me. Not someday. Soon. Before the testimony. Before the media circus. Before everything gets impossibly complicated. You can't. We've only been together 2 months. And I've never been more certain of anything. I love you. I want to build a life with you. I want to be your family, legally, officially, in every way that matters. He pulled a small box from his desk drawer. I've been carrying this for a week, planning to wait until the right moment. But the right moment is now, before the fight, before the crisis. So, you know, absolutely know that I'm choosing you, completely, forever. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, platinum band with an emerald-cut diamond that was probably 5 carats, flanked by smaller diamonds. Simple and elegant and beautiful, and terrifying. Marcus, this is insane. Probably, but I mean it. Marry me. Fight this battle as my wife. Let me stand with you as more than just your boyfriend. Marriage won't protect me from the cartel. No, but it means something. To me, to you, to anyone watching. It means I'm committed beyond convenience. It means family. He took the ring from the box. I know the timing is terrible. I know you're scared, but I need you to know that I'm not going anywhere. Not now, not ever. So marry me, please. Elena looked at the ring, at Marcus, at the future he was offering. Marriage, family, Someone choosing her knowing the cost. Someone staying despite the danger. It was the worst possible timing. It was also the only timing that mattered. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." He slipped the ring on her finger, perfect fit, because of course he'd figured out her size somehow, and kissed her like they were sealing a vow, which they were. "I love you," he said against her mouth. "I love you too, and you're completely insane. I prefer optimistic. You're that too." They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the quiet office while Boston moved outside the windows. Then Elena pulled back. "I'm going to testify," she said. "I'm going to call the FBI and tell them yes. I'm going to give them the evidence files. I'm going to put my father back in prison and stop running." "When?" "Now, before I lose my nerve." Marcus handed her his phone. Elena dialed Agent Chen's number with hands that wanted to shake. The agent answered on the second ring. "Agent Chen, this is Elena Moreno. I've made my decision. I'll testify. I'll give you access to the evidence files. I'll do whatever you need to keep my father in prison." "That's excellent news, Ms. Moreno. When can we begin preparation?" "Whenever you're ready." "How about Monday? We'll set up a secure location for interviews and document review. Full protection detail starts immediately. We'll need addresses for you and anyone requiring collateral protection." Elena looked at Marcus, who nodded. "Send your agents. We're ready." She hung up and stared at the ring on her finger. In the space of an hour, she'd agreed to testify against her father and marry a billionaire who thought timing was optional. "What did we just do?" she asked. "We chose courage over fear and each other over safety." Marcus pulled her close. "No regrets?" "A million regrets, but I'm doing it anyway." "That's my girl." Roberto arrived an hour later, summoned by Elena's text. "Need to talk. Come to Marcus's office. Bring go bag." He walked in, assessed the situation in one glance, and said, "You're testifying." "Yes." "And that's an engagement ring." "Yes." "Anything else I should know?" "FBI protection starts today. They'll extend coverage to you if you want it." Roberto was quiet for a moment. Then, "About damn time, on both counts." "You're not going to tell me I'm being reckless?" "You're being brave, finally. I've been waiting 6 years for you to stop running and start fighting." He looked at Marcus. "You proposed before the testimony." "Yes." "Good, that's smart. She needs family more than she needs protection." Roberto held out his hand. "Welcome to the team, Dr. Thorne. Try not to die." Marcus shook his hand. "I'll do my best. That's all I ask." 3 FBI agents arrived at Marcus's office by 3 p.m. They set up protocols, reviewed threat assessments, and explained what the next 2 months would look like. Intensive preparation sessions, document reviews, practice testimony. They'd coordinate with Marcus's private security to supplement federal protection. The safe house was optional. Elena could stay at Marcus's townhouse if they reinforced security. "I want to stay at his place," Elena said. "If we're getting married, I'm not spending our engagement in FBI housing." Agent Chen almost smiled. "Understood, we'll make it work." By evening, Marcus's townhouse had become a fortress. FBI agents at the door, private security monitoring perimeter, communications jammers and threat detection systems, and all the invisible infrastructure of protection. Elena stood in the library where they had first kissed and felt the walls closing in. Marcus found her there, staring at books she couldn't focus on. "You okay?" he asked. "I just turned my life into a maximum security prison. Temporarily, until after the testimony. And if my father's appeal succeeds anyway, if I testify and he still gets out, then we adapt. But you'll have tried. You'll have fought. That's worth something." Elena touched the ring on her finger, solid and real and permanent. "I'm scared." "I know, but you're also brave, and you're not alone anymore." Marcus pulled her into his arms. "We're in this together, whatever comes next. Even if it's terrible, especially if it's terrible. That's what marriage means, choosing each other during the hard parts. We're not technically married yet. Details, I'm committed either way." Outside, FBI agents patrolled Mount Vernon Street. Inside, Elena Moreno, soon to be Elena Thorne, stood with her fiancé and tried to believe that courage was stronger than fear, that love was worth the risk, that fighting back was better than running forever. In 3 weeks, she'd marry Marcus in a small ceremony at his townhouse. In 6 weeks, she'd walk into a federal courtroom and testify against her father. In between, she'd learn what it meant to live without constantly looking over her shoulder. She'd learn what it meant to be loved and protected and chosen. She'd learn that family wasn't just blood. It was the people who stayed when staying was hard. And she'd learn that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was stop running and stand your ground. Even if the ground was shaking, even if danger was coming, even if everything might fall apart, you stood anyway. You fought anyway. You loved anyway. Because that's what courage looked like. And Elena was finally ready to be brave. The wedding happened on a Thursday afternoon in late February in Marcus's library with 12 people present and FBI agents posted at every entrance. Elena wore a simple cream silk dress from Carolina Herrera. Marcus had insisted on buying it, had somehow known her exact size and taste without asking. She carried white orchids that matched the ones in his office, her mother's pearls at her throat, the emerald engagement ring catching light. Roberto stood as her witness, uncomfortable in a suit but present. Marcus's sister Sarah flew in from San Francisco to stand as his. The officiant was a federal judge who owed Marcus a favor and didn't blink at the security detail. The ceremony took 8 minutes. Elena's voice shook on the vows. Marcus's hands were steady as he slipped the wedding band, platinum engraved inside with the date, onto her finger. I promise to love you through federal investigations and cartel threats and whatever chaos comes next, he said, going off script. I promise to love you through pharmaceutical scandals and media circuses. And the weight of impossible choices, she answered. The judge pronounced them married. Marcus kissed her like they were sealing something more than legal documents, like they were choosing each other despite every rational argument against it. Welcome to the family, Sarah said afterward, pulling Elena into a hug. My brother has terrible timing, but excellent taste. Thank you for coming. I know the circumstances are complicated, I know. Marcus explained everything. Sarah's expression was serious. He loves you, more than I've ever seen him love anyone. So, whatever comes next, we're with you. That's what family means. The reception was cake and champagne in Marcus's dining room, conversation carefully avoiding the topic of next month's testimony, but it hung there anyway. The reason for the rushed wedding, the reason for FBI agents in the hallway, the reason Elena kept checking her phone for updates from her lawyers. You're allowed to be happy today, Marcus said, catching her hand. Just for today. Everything else can wait. I'm trying. Try harder. We just got married. That deserves at least an afternoon of celebration before we go back to crisis mode. Elena forced herself to breathe, to be present, to let herself feel the weight of the rings on her finger and the certainty of Marcus beside her. They'd done this. They'd gotten married knowing what was coming. That had to mean something. That night, alone in their bedroom, she lived here now, had moved her few possessions from her South End studio. Elena stared at the ceiling while Marcus slept. Mrs. Elena Thorne, legally, officially. She'd kept Moreno professionally, but the marriage certificate said Thorne. She was tied to him now in ways that couldn't be easily undone, which meant if the cartel came after her, they'd come after him too. I can hear you catastrophizing, Marcus said into the darkness. I'm not catastrophizing. I'm being realistic. You're spiraling. Come here. He pulled her against his chest. We knew what we were signing up for. Nothing's changed. Everything's changed. I'm your wife now. That makes you a bigger target. Good thing I have excellent security and a wife who's brave enough to testify against a cartel leader. We'll be fine. You can't know that. No, but I can believe it. And I can be here regardless. That's the deal. He kissed her forehead. Now sleep. You have FBI prep tomorrow and you need rest. Elena tried, mostly failed, but Marcus's solid presence helped, and eventually exhaustion won. The next 6 weeks were a blur of preparation. Agent Chen and her team conducted exhaustive interviews. Every detail of Elena's childhood, every piece of evidence she had, every interaction with her father's organization. They reviewed documents, shipping manifests, account numbers, communications, built timelines, anticipated defense arguments. The practice testimony was worse than Elena expected. A federal prosecutor named David Winters played himself, sharp and methodical, walking her through questions designed to establish her credibility and her knowledge. Then one of his colleagues played defense attorney, attacking everything. Ms. Reyes, excuse me, Ms. Moreno. You changed your name, isn't that correct? Yes. And you've been living under a false identity for 6 years? A legal identity. I changed my name through proper channels. But you concealed your connection to Diego Reyes, concealed it from employers, from donors, from everyone you encountered. Isn't that deceptive? It was protective. My father's enemies, your father's enemies, or your father himself. Isn't it true that you stole evidence from his organization and used it to blackmail him into letting you leave? I documented his crimes and made it clear that if anything happened to me, that documentation would become public. That's not blackmail, that's insurance. Semantics, you threatened him. You admit that? Yes. And now, 6 years later, with his appeal pending, you're suddenly willing to testify. Isn't it convenient timing? Almost like you're using this testimony to ensure his continued imprisonment for your own protection. I'm testifying because the FBI asked me to, because my father is a murderer who destroyed thousands of lives, because keeping him in prison is justice, not convenience. The defense attorney, actually a kind woman named Patricia, who apologized after each session, pushed harder. Your father raised you, loved you, sent you to good schools, gave you advantages most children don't have, and you repay him by stealing his files and sending him to prison for life. That's loyalty? Elena's hands shook with rage. My father ordered 17 murders, that I know of. He flooded American cities with drugs that killed thousands. He turned Mexico into a war zone. Loving me doesn't erase that, and I don't owe loyalty to a monster just because we share DNA. Good, David said, breaking character. That's exactly the emotion we want. The jury needs to see you're not cold or calculating. You're someone who made an impossible choice and stands by it. March arrived with false spring, warm days that felt like lies given what was coming. The testimony was scheduled for the second week of March. Elena barely slept. Lost weight Marcus couldn't get her to regain, snapped at Roberto when he hovered, cried in the shower where Marcus wouldn't see. He saw anyway. Found her one night sitting in the bathtub fully clothed, water running cold, staring at nothing. Elena. He turned off the water, wrapped her in towels, carried her to bed. Talk to me. I can't do this. Yes, you can. I'm going to see him in court. For the first time in 6 years, I'm going to see my father and tell a room full of strangers how he destroyed everything. How do I do that? One word at a time, one answer at a time, with me in the gallery watching, with Roberto there, with the FBI protecting you, you're not alone. What if I freeze? What if I can't speak? Then you take a breath and try again. But you won't freeze. You're the strongest person I know. I don't feel strong. I feel terrified. Good. Use it. Let the jury see that you're afraid. That testifying costs you something. That makes you credible. Marcus pulled her closer. You're going to walk into that courtroom and tell the truth. And then you're going to walk out. And we're going to go home. And we're going to build a life. That's the deal. What if? No what ifs. Not tonight. Tonight you just rest. She tried, failed, but eventually exhaustion won again, and she slept curled against Marcus like he was a fortress. The morning of testimony, Elena woke at 5 a.m. and threw up, nerves and fear, and 6 weeks of pressure finally overwhelming her system. Marcus held her hair back, brought water, didn't say anything helpful because there was nothing helpful to say. At 7 a.m., they left for the courthouse in an FBI convoy. 2 SUVs with tinted windows, agents in tactical gear, routes changed at last minute for security. Roberto rode in their vehicle, silent and watchful. Marcus held her hand the entire way. The courthouse was federal concrete brutalism, designed to intimidate. Security was airport-level invasive. They were escorted through back entrances to a witness room where Agent Chen waited. You ready? She asked. No. Good. Ready people are cocky. Scared people are honest. The jury will respond to honest. Chen checked her watch. You'll be called around 10 a.m. Before then, stay here. Don't talk to anyone. Don't look at news or social media. Just breathe and remember your preparation. Marcus started to speak, some words of encouragement or love or support, but Elena stopped him. Don't. If you're nice to me right now, I'll fall apart. Just Be here when I get out. Always. At 9:47 a.m., a bailiff came to escort her. Marcus squeezed her hand one last time. Roberto nodded, silent understanding that he'd failed his niece, but wouldn't fail Elena. Agent Chen gave her a look that said, "You've got this." Then Elena walked into the courtroom. It was smaller than she expected. Federal courtroom, wood paneling, the seal of justice on the wall. Judge Morrison presiding. A woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and an expression that suggested she'd seen everything. Jury box with 12 people who would decide her credibility. Defense table with expensive lawyers in suits that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. And at that defense table, Diego Reyes, her father, 6 years older than when she'd left, grayer, thinner from prison food and maximum security confinement. But his eyes were the same, dark and assessing and absolutely without remorse. He looked at her like she was a problem to be solved, not a daughter testifying against him. Elena forced herself to look away, to focus on the prosecutor's table where David, Winters waited with files and calm confidence. The prosecution calls Elena Moreno to the stand. She walked forward, raised her right hand, swore to tell the truth, sat in the witness box and tried not to shake. David approached with a kind smile. "Ms. Moreno, thank you for being here today. I know this is difficult." "Yes." "Can you state your relationship to the defendant, Diego Reyes?" "He's my father." "And when did you last see him?" 6 years ago, before I left Mexico." "Can you describe the circumstances of your departure?" Elena took a breath. This was it. The story she'd rehearsed, the truth she'd been protecting. "I left because I discovered documentation of my father's criminal activities, account numbers, shipping manifests, communications related to drug trafficking, money laundering, and ordered murders. I threatened to make that documentation public if he prevented my departure. He let me go. I came to Boston and changed my name." "Why did you document these activities?" "My mother did. Before she died, she gave me the files and told me to use them if I ever needed to escape. She knew what my father was. She wanted me to have a way out." "Your mother, how did she die?" "Car accident, officially. But it was arranged by rival cartel members as retaliation against my father's organization. Objection from defense, sustained. Speculation." David pivoted. "The documentation your mother provided, you still have it?" "I do. Copies are with the FBI. The originals are in secure locations as part of my protection system." "Protection from whom?" "From people loyal to my father, from cartel members who might want to prevent this testimony, from anyone who would benefit from my silence." "Are you testifying today under duress? Has anyone forced you to be here?" "No, I'm here voluntarily, because my father's appeal threatens to overturn his conviction, and I have information that can prevent that, because he's dangerous and needs to remain in prison." David walked her through the documentation, specific accounts, specific shipments, specific communications. Elena provided details about conversations she had overheard, meetings she'd witnessed, the structure of her father's organization. Her voice stayed steady even as her hands shook. Then it was defense attorney Maria Cardoza's turn. Elegant woman in her 50s, expensive suit, shark's eyes. "Ms. Moreno, or should I call you Ms. Reyes? Which is your real name?" "Moreno is legally my name, has been for 6 years. But you were born Elena Reyes, raised as Elena Reyes, educated under that name, correct?" "Yes." "And when you left Mexico, you didn't just change your name. You created an entirely new identity, new history. Told people you were from California when you were actually from Guadalajara. Told people your family was military when your father was actually a cartel leader. You lied consistently for 6 years. Isn't that accurate?" "I protected myself. There's a difference." "Is there? From where I stand, you're an accomplished liar who's now asking this jury to believe you're suddenly telling the truth." Objection, argumentative. Sustained. Ms. Cardoza, ask questions. "Ms. Moreno, you claim to have documentation of criminal activities, yet you didn't provide this documentation to authorities 6 years ago when you left. You kept it, used it as leverage. That suggests you weren't actually concerned about justice. You were concerned about self-preservation, correct?" "Both can be true. I wanted justice, but I also wanted to survive. And now, conveniently, With your father's appeal pending, you're willing to provide this documentation. Not 6 years ago, not 5 years ago. Now, when it benefits you to ensure he stays imprisoned. I'm providing it now because the FBI asked for it, because his appeal threatens to free him, which would put me in danger. So, you admit your testimony is motivated by self-interest. My testimony is motivated by truth. But yes, I want him to stay in prison because he's dangerous, because he's killed people, because if he gets out, I'll be dead within a month. That's quite dramatic. It's reality. You want me to pretend I'm testifying out of pure civic duty? I'm not. I'm testifying because he's a monster and I don't want to die. But that doesn't make my testimony less true. Cardoza changed tactics. You claim your father ordered 17 murders. Can you name the victims? Some of them. How many? 8 that I know specifically. And the other 9? I saw documentation but don't remember all the names. So you're guessing, estimating, not providing actual facts. I'm providing what I know. The documentation the FBI has contains specific details. Documentation you kept hidden for 6 years. Documentation that conveniently supports your narrative. And how do we know you didn't fabricate some of it? Why would I fabricate evidence that puts me in danger? To ensure your father stays imprisoned, to protect yourself, to justify your betrayal. Objection, David stood. Counsel is testifying. Sustained, Ms. Cardoza, move on. The questioning continued for another hour. Cardoza attacked her credibility, her motivations, her timeline, her memory. Elena answered each question as calmly as she could, feeling her father's eyes on her the entire time. Finally, the judge called for afternoon recess. Elena was escorted back to the witness room, where Marcus waited. She fell into his arms, shaking. "You did amazing," he said. "You were perfect. I was terrified. You were honest. That's what matters." Agent Chen appeared in the doorway. "Defense is almost done. You'll be back on the stand for about 30 minutes tomorrow, then you're finished. You did great, Elena. Really great." That night, back at the townhouse, under FBI protection, Elena couldn't stop shaking. Marcus ran her a bath, poured wine she couldn't drink, held her while she cried. "I looked at him," she said, "my father, and there was nothing, no recognition, no regret, just calculation. Like I was a problem that he was still figuring out how to solve. He can't touch you. He's in maximum security. You're protected. For now, but if the appeal succeeds, it won't. Your testimony was too strong. The documentation is too clear. He's staying in prison. You can't know that. I can believe it, and I can be here regardless." Marcus kissed her temple. "You did the hard part. You walked into that courtroom and faced him. Everything else is just waiting." The next morning, Cardoza had 30 more minutes of cross-examination. She used it to imply Elena was vindictive, selfish, unreliable. Elena held firm, answering each question with the same calm honesty she'd practiced. Then it was over. The judge dismissed her from the stand. Elena walked out of the courthouse and into the FBI convoy, and for the first time in 6 weeks, she could breathe. "It's done," she said to Marcus in the car. "It's done. What happens now? Now we wait for the appeal decision. Could take weeks or months, but you did your part. The rest is up to the court." Elena leaned against him, exhausted beyond measure. "Take me home." Already heading there. Home was the townhouse on Mount Vernon Street. Home was Marcus's arms and Roberto's silent presence and FBI agents in the hallway. Home was safety that felt fragile, but real. That night, Elena slept for 12 hours straight, slept without nightmares, without checking her phone, without testing the dead hand system. When she woke, Marcus was watching her with an expression that was part relief, part love, part pride. "Morning," he said. "Morning. How long was I out?" "Long enough. You needed it." Elena stretched, feeling tension release from muscles that had been locked for weeks. "When do we find out about the appeal?" Judge said 4 to 8 weeks for decision. Could be tomorrow, could be June. And in the meantime, we live. You go back to New Hope. I go back to work. We have dinner together. We build a life. We practice being normal. Normal with FBI agents following me everywhere. Details. 6 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning in late April, the decision came down. Appeal denied. All counts upheld. Diego Reyes would serve life without parole at ADX Florence. No further appeals pending. Elena got the call from David Winters while she was at New Hope reviewing expansion plans. The $3 million from Marcus had been joined by 2 more foundations, once word got out about the quality of their work. "It's over," David said. "He's staying in prison. You're safe." Elena sat down at her desk, Roberto materializing in her doorway like he'd sensed something. "The appeal?" he asked. "Denied. He's staying in prison." Roberto's shoulders dropped, tension held for 6 years finally releasing. "Good. That's good." "Yeah." Elena stared at her phone. "It's over. Actually over. Not over. Better. But not over. There will still be threats, still danger, just less immediate." He was right. The cartel wouldn't forget. Her father's loyalists wouldn't forgive. But the most immediate danger, him walking free, was gone. Elena called Marcus. He answered on the first ring. "I heard. David called me too." His voice was warm with relief. "How are you feeling?" "Strange, like I've been holding my breath for 6 years and just remembered I can exhale." "Want to celebrate? Dinner at Mentone, champagne?" "Actually, I want to go home, just us. Roberto can order pizza. We can sit on the couch and do nothing." "Perfect. I'll be home in an hour." That night, they ate pizza on Marcus's, their, living room floor, drank champagne straight from the bottle because neither of them felt like finding glasses, laughed at nothing and everything, let themselves feel the weight of done. "What happens to FBI protection?" Elena asked. "Scales back over the next few months. We'll keep private security permanently, but the full federal detail can go once threat assessment drops." "Will it drop?" "Eventually. The cartel has bigger problems than hunting you now that your father's appeal failed. Revenge is expensive when the target has resources to fight back." Marcus pulled her closer. "You'll never be completely safe, but you'll be safer than you've been in 6 years. Safe enough to actually live, that's the goal." 3 months later, on a July evening when Boston humidity made everything feel like soup, Elena stood in New Hope's expanded facility. They'd bought the floor above, doubled their capacity, hired 8 new staff, and watched Roberto help a new client carry boxes to his residential room. The center had survived the media attention. Some donors had walked away when they learned Elena's identity, but more had stepped up. Celebrities who wanted to support someone who'd fought back against organized crime, foundations that valued courage, individual donors inspired by her story. New Hope now had 24 residential beds and space for 60 in outpatient programs. They'd started satellite locations in Cambridge and Worcester. Elena's protocols were being studied by treatment centers across New England. She'd built something that would outlive her. Marcus appeared in her office doorway, slightly rumpled from work. "Ready to go home?" "Always." They drove through Boston's summer evening, windows down because Marcus claimed the Aston Martin needed to breathe. Elena's phone buzzed with a text from her therapist, reminder about tomorrow's session. She'd been going twice a week since the testimony, working through PTSD, learning to sleep without hypervigilance, accepting that safety didn't require constant alertness. It was slow work, hard work, but worth it. At home, she thought of the townhouse as home now, completely and without reservation. They made dinner together. Marcus cooked while Elena chopped vegetables and stole bites of whatever he was testing. Roberto had his own apartment now, 2 blocks away, but he still showed up for Sunday dinners and holidays. After dinner, they sat in the library where they had first kissed, where Marcus had proposed, where Elena had told him the truth. The room held their history, and it felt right to be there. "Do you regret it?" Marcus asked, testifying, everything that came after. Elena thought about the question honestly. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret the media circus. I regret losing some donors and having clients question whether they could trust me. But I don't regret the choice. And I don't regret that it brought us here, to this life, to you. Even with the ongoing threats and permanent security, even with all of that, I'd choose this, choose you, 1,000 times over." Marcus pulled her closer. "I'd choose you infinity times. I'm competitive like that." Elena laughed, the sound bright in the quiet house. Outside, Boston moved through summer evening. Inside, 2 people who'd survived impossible circumstances built a life that was complicated and real and worth every risk. New Hope continued to grow. Marcus's foundation funded addiction treatment programs across New England, using Elena's model as template. Thorne Pharmaceuticals completed its transition away from opioid manufacturing, focusing exclusively on non-addictive alternatives. The industry noticed. Lives improved. Elena's testimony became case law, establishing precedent for family members who cooperated with RICO prosecutions. Other children of cartel leaders came forward. The wall of silence cracked. She still had hard days, days when anxiety won, days when she checked the dead hand system just to feel in control, days when protection detail felt suffocating, days when she questioned whether she'd made the right choice. But she also had good days, days when clients graduated the program sober and grateful, days when Marcus made her laugh until she cried, days when Roberto actually smiled, days when she woke up next to her husband in their home and felt something close to peace. Not perfect, not uncomplicated, but real. 5 years after that courthouse testimony, Elena stood in her office, corner space in the expanded facility, actual windows instead of brick wall view, and looked at the photograph on her desk. Her wedding day. Small ceremony. 12 people who mattered. 2 people who'd found each other in the wreckage and built something real. She wore her mother's pearls in that photo. Carried white orchids, said vows that promised partnership and honesty and choosing each other every day. Marcus had cried when she promised to love him through pharmaceutical scandals and whatever chaos came next. Elena had cried when he promised to love her through cartel threats and the weight of impossible choices. They'd both kept their promises. Her phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. "Dinner at home tonight? I'm making that thing you like." Elena smiled and typed back, "The eggs? Don't insult me. The braised short ribs, the eggs are breakfast food. You're very serious about food categories. Someone has to maintain standards. 7 p.m.? Perfect. I love you. I love you too." Elena set down her phone and looked around her office. Photographs from graduating classes. Awards that meant less than thank you notes from clients. Her doctorate degree. She'd gone back to school right after the testimony, finished her PhD in social work 3 years later while running the center. Because why not add one more challenge to an already complicated life? And on the wall behind her desk, the mission statement she'd framed 7 years ago. Recovery is not luxury. It is a human right. She'd built this out of fear and determination and the refusal to repeat her father's legacy. She'd built it with stubborn optimism and strategic planning and support from people who believed in her mission. And she'd built it with Marcus, with his funding and faith and love, with his belief that redemption was possible and second chances mattered. Elena Moreno Thorne, she used both names now, professionally and personally, had survived her father's empire, had testified against him, had fallen in love with a man who saw her past and chose her anyway, had built a life that saved people instead of destroying them. The journey had been brutal. The cost had been high. The road ahead would still have challenges. Cartel threats never fully disappeared. Addiction treatment would always need funding. PTSD didn't just vanish because the crisis ended. But sitting in her office watching Boston move through summer evening, thinking about dinner with her husband and the lives saved today and the work continuing tomorrow, Elena felt something she'd spent most of her life chasing. Not peace, not exactly, but something close. Contentment, purpose, love. The knowledge that she'd chosen courage over fear, that she'd fought instead of hiding, that she'd built something meaningful out of impossible circumstances. And that was worth everything she'd risked to get here. Elena pulled on her coat, still cashmere, because Marcus had opinions, and headed for the door. She had dinner plans with her husband. She had a center full of people doing important work. She had a life built through courage and compromise and choosing truth over comfort. She had survived her father's legacy by refusing to repeat it, and she had found love in the most unlikely place, in the arms of a man who understood that redemption required more than good intentions. It required action, resources, consistent choice. It required being better tomorrow than you were today. Elena locked the center's door and walked out into Boston summer, her security detail a discreet presence, her phone full of texts from Marcus making dinner jokes, her heart full of gratitude for the complicated, beautiful, hard-won life she'd built. Recovery was not luxury. It was a human right. Second chances were not gifts. They were earned. And love, real love, tested by federal testimony and cartel threats and media circuses, was not easy. But it was worth it, every single time.